This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith. So yesterday, I went up to a little town called Delta, Ontario. It's kind of a small farming town, really tiny. Has a mill, the oldest mill in Ontario, and it's been nicely restored. It looks great. Water rushing underneath it. There's a little museum in it. You can walk around. But I went yesterday because it was the Delta Maple Syrup Festival. Now you thought I'd had enough maple syrup after a couple of weeks ago, but no, I wanted to go for more. And I went and I got a bottle from this one guy, Len Vincent, I think his name is. He's some old guy who sets up his table with maple syrup that he makes himself. And it's a stronger tasting syrup. He tells me that he blends red maples, a red maple with his sugar maples to get that tang that he likes. So I bought a bottle of that and potted around, and there were some blacksmiths that were set up on the street hammering stuff, like they were making little hooks that you could hang your coat on and stuff like that, and selling those. But they had a forge set up and they were hammering away. And I talked to some of them and I said I was a jeweler and I use smaller tools, and same sort of idea of like heating shit up and bending it and whatever. Anyway, it was nice talking to those guys and seeing what they were doing. And they're just kind of volunteers. They're just like just dudes with forges in the neighborhood, I guess. I don't know. That must be a whole scene itself. I don't watch reality television, but I think there's like 3 or 4 forge shows out there by now. Anyway, but yeah, so today I was thinking, let's talk about silver. Silver is a precious metal. As the price of gold crosses, I just looked today, it's like over $2,000 for an ounce of gold. As the price of gold goes up, the price of gold jewelry goes up. And so people tend to look towards silver for a precious metal that is not as expensive. And you might wonder why silver is not as expensive as gold. Why is silver less expensive than gold? Well, a lot more of it is produced than gold. So by some accounts, anywhere from, 30 to 104 times as much. It can fluctuate, but in that sort of range. So more of it is produced than gold. So as an investment thing, if you were going to store it, you need a lot more space to store it. And the precious metals are heavy too, right? Like they're just like bars. In the jewelry context, if you're looking for a precious metal, silver is amazing. And it's always been used in jewelry. It goes way back for use in jewelry. Now, the reason people don't like using it is because it tarnishes, right? The air, like if you were to take a piece of silver, if I was to take a piece of silver and sand it and shine it up and get a really shiny surface on it and then leave it out on a table, quite soon actually, it won't be as shiny. The high shine will be the first to go. And then it might take on a slight cast, a sort of yellowish, kind of darker cast. After a while, it becomes really quite noticeable. And then you have to buff it, shine it up, and to bring back that original shine. Now, this years ago, just think of all these rich people in England with their silver knives and forks. Their 144 or to 500 person place settings with forks, knives, all made out of silver, like heavy duty shit, right? The rich in the back in the day, and all this stuff is tarnishing, right? So you have to kind of continuously polish it to keep it going. Like, I'm sure they weren't using the full 500-piece place setting every meal. So the rest of it had to be kept polished. So then you have these butlers, and the butlers were the people and the people polishing and shining up all these pieces. And there's a finish that we like here at Tribe called a butler finish. And it's a finish that I put on my silver products. And it's a combination of techniques I use to get a shiny finish, but not too shiny. It's not matte, but it looks like it's been like if you get a silver knife and it's been polished by a butler for 100 years. There'll be microscopic scratches in the surface, but they'll be so small that you can't see them, yet they scatter the light. So it gives our silver products a soft glow. That's easy to maintain, right? Like you just rub it on a piece of cloth and it'll be fine. But silver, again, tarnish. The reason why jewelers don't like it is that, I'll tell you a secret. It's like if I make a ring out of silver that's worth less, the metal's worth less money, but I still have to put the same amount of work into it. Jewelers, we don't make pieces for us, right? We make pieces for other people. So people, custom jewelers like us, right? We're like, okay, in our case, the sky's the limit. Jewelers overall, we have to look at metals. Which metals will sell more? And the jewelers that sell to the mainstream markets, the public, they're being forced into silver because gold has become too expensive for people to afford. And then people are being forced into plated jewelry, which is not, you don't buy plated jewelry, buy real metal. Buy silver. It's less expensive, but it's real. And it doesn't have something on the surface, like another metal on top of it, on its surface. There are going to be all kinds of issues with that. That I'll get to you in a second. So get nothing plated. And there are different words for plated. So don't fall for any of them. It's plated, right? Okay, now, where was I? Silver. Oh. The tarnish aspect of silver is what makes jewelers reluctant to sell it, and also the labor involved, because it takes the same amount, if not more sometimes, to make something as silver as it does in, say, gold. It's really hard to polish silver. It's tough to get a nice finish on a piece of silver. The silver has this tarnish characteristic, which is what I think makes it special, because you can harness it. A smart jeweler will be able to harness this tarnish, this capacity of silver to tarnish, and use it in designs. And we do this. Now, the other thing about silver is it feels great. It just feels great. If you have a silver bangle or a silver ring on, it just feels great. And if you wear it all the time, it looks better. Silver has to be worn all the time. And if it is, it won't tarnish because it's rubbing against your clothing, yourself, objects, all kinds of things. And it's developing this butler type finish in daily life. Like I made a cannabis root torque bracelet. A torque bracelet is just like an open-ended sort of bracelet that wraps around the wrist. It has a gap in the middle, right? You just sort of form it around your wrist. It's kind of an old kind of Viking-y, or even older than that. I guess really old design. Simple, but effective, right? In a design. Anyway, I took a cannabis root from it had a nice character to it. It had a nice like curve in it. And so I cast this in sterling silver. And the root, I didn't see it in the actual root, but when it came out in the silver, we capture everything in the casting. Our master goldsmith captures absolutely everything. So I saw these lines in the root, and this is the actual root, the cannabis root, and it has these tiny lines in it, right? So anyway, this can be darkened to in the lower areas to make the lines appear more visible. But otherwise you won't see them because they're quite small. But it gives character to the piece. So anyway, I gave her this piece and she wore it on her wrist for a long time, for I don't know, years, right? And it was an early test piece of mine, and because she had all kinds of other stuff on her wrists with it. She had these bracelets that women often wear, with these stone beads, but these were quartz beads, and quartz is really, really hard. It's like sandpaper, right? So anyway, these quartz beads and these different minerals she was wearing around her wrist were rubbing against this silver and taking out parts of the design, like just erasing it, because it's like they're being sanded. But other parts were still there. So it changed the appearance of the piece. It was amazing. It's like living. It's like, this is the thing with silver. There's a softness to it that extracts your life. Like, your life changes it. Your life, like a jeweler can only do so much. Like, I tend to make a piece, I'll either put an enormous amount of detail into a piece, like one of our leaves, our cannabis leaves, where they're exact replicas of the leaf itself, right? Because it's a leaf. It's a real leaf, right? So there's an enormous amount of detail in it, and if you go close with a lens, you'll see it, right? And then there's other finishes that I take out, so they're flat. They're like in our grinders, in our Model 1 grinders, there's a lot of flat surfaces. There's no detail. It's just flat, right? It's like large, heavy, flat kind of surfaces. But both of those, the detailed one and the flat one, if you wear it every day, if you expose it to your life, it changes, and your life becomes a part of it. And this is why silver is amazing. The softness of it and the ability of it to be molded by your own body or by objects it dings into and stuff is what makes the finish spectacular. But you have to wear the piece all the time, and this is the thing, or frequently, right? For a one-off piece, you're gonna have to be prepared to buff it up before you take it out of the box and buff it up, then rock it. But if you wear it every day, it will become a part of you and pick up your very nature over time. And this is the beauty of silver that a lot of people do not understand. And this is why I like it so much. Now, as I said, as jewelers, we are faced with this dilemma. We love working with it, but if we put a huge amount of work into it, it's hard to sell for a good price because the metal's inexpensive, and the economics of it for jewelers, it becomes really bad. Especially, it's the ability of silver to change like this. That's what makes it special in a jewelry piece. So, jewelry designers have to design this way, and I do. It's like, okay, if this piece that my friend wore, this root, it just got so beaten up by the stones that eventually I made her an exact, as close as I could make to that one. Each of our pieces is unique, so I made her a very similar piece and gave her that. And we'll see what that looks like in a few years with all the stuff she wears on her wrist, like as it gets jumbled around together like that. And her life. Silver, that characteristic of it to become better looking, the longer it's and the more frequently it's worn, is amazing. And this is why I want to work on silver belt buckles, because, I've got this belt that I've worn for 30 odd years. Like, I've worn it nearly every day. It's a huge, big leather belt with a big, massive buckle on it. It's like an aluminum buckle. It's huge. It's oversized, massive thing. But I've worn it nearly every day for 30 years. But I'm thinking, if this buckle was made of silver, what it would look like after that period of time, it would just look amazing. Because you see, if you get a piece of metal, and like the blacksmiths at this Delta Fair yesterday, if you get a big flat piece of metal and you put it on a table and you hammer it, there's a ding in it, right? And that ding is like a dip, a shadow. And that reflects light back at you differently than the sheet. That's why you can see it there. It's a ding, right? But imagine, shrink all that down to microscopic level, and this is what's happening to your jewelry. It's getting dinged. And when the light hits those little dings, it diffuses and spreads out. And this is what gives the silver this glow, right? It's like fantastic. You can see one of our silver chains at the bottom of our homepage. It's one of our giant like raver chains, but you can see it compared to a gold 18 karat gold link and what that looks like. Now, the silver in this photograph is not treated with any chemicals. This is just like sterling silver, but it has a slightly bluish cast, and I created that with lighting. So while the gold looks gold, the silver can change. The color of the silver can change. The room, depending on the room you're in, the lighting you're in. So with silver, this is something to take into account too. It's not going to look the same way it does when you buy it. You step outside in the sun, it's going to look different. Or in a room with low lighting, like where I shot the links, that chain link at the bottom of our homepage at tribe.ca. You'll see what just kind of a dim lighting can do, what make silver look like. Yeah, silver's amazing, but the silver you buy is not pure silver. Keep that in mind. Silver, pure silver or fine silver, it's an amazing metal. It's too soft to like wear for daily wear. This glow that silver gets comes from the silver. It doesn't come from the other metal in the sterling silver alloy. Sterling silver is an alloy of two metals. It's 92.5% silver, and the rest that make it up to 100 is copper. And they add the copper when the silver is molten. It's like liquid, and then the copper is liquid, and they blend together into an alloy. And when it cools, you get sterling silver. It becomes harder. It's still soft, though. Silver is still a soft metal, comparatively speaking, sterling silver. But it's harder than it was. And it's easier to work into jewelry and stuff when you add that little bit of copper into the silver. Now, there are other metals that they add in sometimes. There's one called germanium or argentium or whatever is the name, the silver brand. They've got a brand name of silver. Somebody's trying to brand name a recipe, a silver alloy recipe, which is smart if they can do it. It's like germanium and silver in a similar proportion to copper and silver and sterling silver. And when they add this other metal into it, it makes it stiffer. It's like, I guess for something like if you think eyeglass frames, like if you have a very thin wire on an eyeglass frame, in sterling silver, it would bend too easy, right? And the glass would fall out of the eyeglass, or the part on the side of your head would like bend out or whatever. But if they make a silver alloy with germanium, it becomes stiffer. And so you can do these long stretches, say from the ear to the eyeglass. That long piece of wire on the side of your head, on the eyeglass frame, that won't bend so easily. So the application matters too. But back to regular sterling silver, which is the stuff that jewelers use. The beauty of it is, I love it. Like when I photograph it, like on the pictures on our homepage, it can change. Like all the lighting conditions on those photographs are the same. All of them. But the photographs are the silver looks different in each one. I use the same lens. I use like the same settings. Everything is identical on all these photos on our homepage. Go see. And yet the silver looks different in each photograph. This is how silver can change. And this is why it's so versatile. When I tell people it changes, and it's a life. It's a life metal. It's like a sweater. It's like a comfortable sweater after a while. It actually forms to fit your shape, the shape of your body over time. Like if you wear a ring, it'll flatten at the bottom, like if it's silver, to become more like the shape of your own finger kind of thing. This is why I like it so much. But you can do stuff with design, and I've used the ability to darken it on purpose to incorporate that into designs. I'm working on the charm bracelet now. It's just going to have our butler finish on it. It's going to be a giant sterling silver bracelet with like little tiny bongs and little tiny like cannabis leaves and a little tiny mushroom, stuff hanging off the bracelet. I'm calling it drugs. And I might do some small darkening in the charms itself, but not on the bracelet itself. But something like this that would be worn and get knocked around or whatever will keep the silver looking great. So while other jewelers kind of veer away from silver, they try and cover it up with gold plating or whatever. No, don't cover your silver up with gold plating. Jesus. Silver's beautiful just as it is. It's great. It's a great metal. And because it's less expensive, your pieces can be enormous. Like I make enormous, like our hip hop chains are like, they're like half a pound, right? Like they're huge, heavy things. It's like you're almost developing your neck muscles by wearing these things because they're so heavy, right? But because it's not gold, you are saving literally $50,000 or $100,000 or whatever the gold value would be in something like that. A lot. But yeah, so that's the scoop on silver and why I like it. Now, every country, I realize that many of you are listening to this, the one or two who are listening to this, might be living in other countries. And here's the thing. Every country seems to have their own famous jeweler. There's always one jeweler in a country who's famous, and usually for working with silver, not for gold. It's like they're like a man of the people that eventually they work in silver, and they open stores, and you'll see this in every country. We have one here, Henry Burks, who was around in the 1800s, and he is Canada's most famous jeweler after me, I guess. Nod, wink, nudge. He was around in the 1800s, and like his back then the objects that people wanted to buy were different, right? There was lots of flatware, and flatware is stuff like knives and forks, stuff that's mostly flat. And hollowware, which is like bowls and like tureens and like dinner, like curved bowly things, right? And tankards, like he seemed to like all the work I've seen of him seems like beer mugs, like these massive like silver beer mugs, like crazy amount of work and detail into them. Like anyway, this was Henry Burks, and he apprenticed at this place called Savage and Lyman for like 2 decades in the 1800s in Montreal. Then he started his own shop, Henry Burks. And he fanned out across Canada with stores eventually, and they were all across Canada, and they still exist today, but they're not owned by him. They're owned by, I think, an Italian corporation or whatever. But there's a collection of his silver at the National Gallery in Canada, which I've been trying to see, and they almost... I had an appointment to go in. It's not on public display, so you have to go in and look at it and make appointments and stuff. And this takes months and months and months. And anyway, there was a pandemic, and so I'm going to have to email them again because I want to see it. I want to see some of this stuff. I've seen some of it at the National Gallery, the stuff they have on display. The work is beautiful. As a jeweler, this is something you guys have to listen to and take note of too, is always look at the back. Always look at the inside. What's going on behind then all the fanciness on the surface? I want to see what's underneath. This is why I need to go into the National Gallery, look at the pieces. I want to look inside the pieces to see how he's constructed them, right? This is stuff you can't see when it's on a shelf. You have to pick it up and look at it. So when you're buying jewelry, remember this. Look, don't just get dazzled by the front. Look at the back, right? In fact, spend more time looking at the back. The person selling it to you will immediately know that you're aware, right? You're vigilant. You're watching for quality. You're looking for quality, right? So anyway, back to Burks and silver. So Burks I grew up in Montreal, and the Burke's stores. I remember going past it as a kid and looking in these like thick windows, like they were probably looked like 6-inch thick, like sheets of bulletproof glass or whatever, and seeing like a baby solid gold baby shoes and shit like this, and like I couldn't even imagine like ever wanting shit like that or owning it ever like. But extreme quality, high end, like, but driven with a kind of it seemed to be driven from a kind of tankard 1800s kind of vibe. Anyway, in your own country, you'll have a famous silversmith or goldsmith or both or jeweler. Well, look for them. Look, they still might be around. You might be able to get an amazing piece from wherever you're at, or at least see what they do and how your own culture has influenced silver smithing, because every country is a bit different. With Canada, Burke's came from the old world, came from the ideas. They came from England, right? And so that's where all the influence seems to have come from. As for other influences, we make jewelry from cannabis. So I'm forging ahead. That was a sort of a pun, but forging ahead, like. Tankards are so 1800s. Let's move into the future. That's what I say. So I am making sterling silver mushrooms. I'm going to make a few things this week out of sterling silver. That's the goal. I'm going to design. I'm working on a mushroom, a sterling silver psilocybe mushroom to hang on this giant charm bracelet. I'm going to try and make another little bong to hang on the charm bracelet, and then our master goldsmith's going to cast that for us in sterling, and we'll see what it looks like. I'm going to do it sort of cartoony looking, but really I should make it out of like a miniature tankard with like a stem and a bowl sticking out of that. That might work. That would be Canadiana on a charm bracelet, and a nod to old Henry Burke's, our Canada's first master silversmith. So what about silver? What else about silver can I tell you? Oh, it's what is it like to work with? It's so hard to polish. It is so hard. One grain of like sandpaper from the wrong grit, and your finish is fucked. You have to start over, basically. It's like you have to be scrupulously clean. You have to ultrasound the piece before, after every grit of sandpaper to remove the previous grit. You have to, if I had a clean room like they do where they make these chips in Taiwan, man, the silver jewelry you can make in that thing would be just sick, right? But no. So most jewelers don't have that kind of like medical grade cleanliness on their bench, right? They don't have that dust freeness. So we have to deal with what we have. And the pieces always, let me tell you, as a jeweler, the piece you buy might look great, but to get it to that point might have taken hours, right? To get it to that point. So whenever you're getting something custom made, not machine produced, like the machine can spend all the time it wants, right? Grinding something out in million by the million, and it's not sweating. It's not putting any love into it, right? It's just operating on instructions. But a jeweler who's like worked hours on making a piece beautiful, that's the difference between a piece that has like a kind of an heirloom quality that can be passed down, and there's stuff that's gone into it. And especially if a person's worn it and their life has gone into it too. Like you get these little, like my friend's bracelet, right? It has dings and like it has her life built into it, right? Silver, it's a fantastic metal. I mean, it's just fantastic. Like it doesn't get the respect it deserves. Don't plate it. Don't cover it up with like phony, like even if it's gold, don't paint a little layer of gold. Oh, I was going to describe to you what happens to plating. Okay. If you get silver, which is great, and you plate it with gold, what happens is the plating is like microns thin. It's like atoms thin. Gold can go on so thin and look gold, like a gold color, that it's applied so thin. And what happens is when in daily wear, when you're wearing the jewelry piece and it bumps against something, it scratches the gold layer and it exposes the silver below it to air. And the silver tarnishes under the gold. And there's an electric thing that happens. There's an electrical discrepancy. I'm not a chemist, but I was really wasted in university. So I'm trying to remember my chemistry. It's like rust on a car, right? You put a layer on top of it, but if the top layer chips, the rust, this is what happens with it's not rust though. But the gold surface looks terrible, and you have to get it replated again and again and again. Because of these like micro cracks, or then when you scrape off this tiny atom's thin layer of gold on the surface, the silver underneath doesn't like that, right? It's just like, look, well, why are you trying to cover me up away from the sun? I want to be exposed. I want to show myself to the world, and yet you put this gold on me and try and like hide me, like, oh, what the fuck? Like, and the silver rebels. It doesn't like this. It doesn't. The gold will look worse. It will look worse. And then you'll see artifacts. You'll see like, oh, well, parts of it will not be gold. And you'll say, oh, that doesn't look real at all, right? And so never buy plated jewelry. It's just that the daily wear aspect of it will make it look like shit really quickly. Now you can plate heavily. It'll last a bit longer, but it's still plating. Don't do it. If you can afford to plate heavily to the thickness that is required, you might as well just buy a gold thing if that's what you want. Silver's fine just on its own. Let it shine. That's what I'm saying. So that's it for me. I've been rambling and rambling. I moved out here to the country to focus on design. This is what I moved out here for. I thought, oh, I'll have all the time in the world to focus on design. I spent yesterday trying to prune this bush. This bush is massive. It took me like all afternoon just to prune one bush, right? And I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea. I'm just cutting away with the pruners, like just pruning. I'm trying to remember what my mother told me about pruning. I did some random Googling, asked ChatGPT a few things about pruning. I got a book on pruning even. But still, when you're out there in the thick of it with the pruners, like all that goes out the window and you're there with the fucking pruners and hoping you're not hurting the tree, yet cutting off. Anyway, I just cut off as much of the dead shit as I could. But unfortunately, and sorry, bush, I took off some of the green shit too. So it's spring. I don't know if it's the right time of the year to prune or whatever. So anyway, but it does look sparse. Anyway, I hope it comes back. The sun's out, and I'm going to clean up all of the crap that I cut off and put it in piles. That's what I'm going to do today. That's it for me, the Cannabis Goldsmith, coming to you on live-ish digital from the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada, the most beautiful and oldest part of Canada, I have to tell you. The river is sparkling this morning. In Ontario, it just looks just beautiful as it flows towards the sea. See what we do at tribe.ca. Send me an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Next week, I don't know what we're going to talk about. It'll be something, I'm sure.